Hello, everyone, and welcome to the second Avanade webinar today, focused on the innovation and design thinking. I'm Diana Philip, and I will be the moderator for today. And it's my pleasure to welcome you to this edition of the webinar, which is part of the Digital Innovation Award, which will be given at the Enterprise Challenge in Oslo to the best startups that will showcase a digitally innovative mindset as they conceive their business idea or concept. And the teams will be judged by senior leaders from Avanade who will assess each business in terms of its viability and feasibility, sustainability, digital ethics, team presentation, and soft skills. But we have Tina Senior from Avanade, Corporate Citizenship Communications Director, who will tell you more about the prize and the work criteria later on. To start with, we will have John Knight, who's the design strategy director at Avanade London Digital Studio, who will talk about the innovation and design thinking. But before I give the floor to John, I wanted to thank you all for joining this webinar. This is the second series of webinars we do with Avanade. The webinar will be recorded and will be made available for everyone else who's not been able to join the today's session, because we know it's a school holiday and we appreciate you making the time for this. We know that 15 teams will be representing 14 countries at this edition of the Enterprise Challenge in Oslo this year. So we will really look forward to seeing the most of you there. And if your team has not been able to register because your competition still needs to take place at the local level, we appreciate you taking the time to join and inform the teams when you know who the winner will be about this webinar, so that they can get better prepared for the award in Oslo. So for the agenda today, I will not be speaking too much because I think it's mostly important for you to hear from John and Tina about the topic of innovation and design thinking, and also all the criteria around the Avanade Digital Innovation Award. And we will really welcome your questions. We'll make sure we'll answer them. There is a chat box where you can add your question, and my colleagues will read that aloud for the speakers to answer. So without further ado, John, I'll give the floor to you, because we were very keen to hear about design thinking and how those teams can apply the innovation and design thinking in their startups.
Hello, well, thanks for the invitation, and look forward to sharing some of my insights and knowledge on design thinking. Let me know when you can see the slides.
All good, we can see the slides.
Okay, good. So my name's John Knight. I work in the Avanade London Digital Innovation Studio, and I just thought I'd give you some background into what we do as a studio before I go on to the kind of nuts and bolts of how we do innovation. So we're a couple of years old, and there are 28 of us in the studio. We're part of a global network of studios in the US, Europe, all around the world. And we are a multidisciplinary team. So we have some developers and designers, people who do research, strategy, and the whole reason for us being in one place together is to really drive innovation. So to really help our clients and businesses to not just come up with new ideas, but to deliver and build and see real transformation using all of the amazing digital technologies that we have today. So in the studio, one of the things that we do very often for our clients is to run design thinking sessions. And these are collaborative events where we bring together a group of people and we use a set of methods and tools to help them come up with breakthrough innovation and ideas and concepts. It's mainly built around design, and I just wondered if I could get some ideas on what people think design is in a studio. So what are the kind of practices that people see designers doing. So what if you think of a kind of stereotype designer or the kind of classic design studio, what are some of the words and the ideas that spring to mind?
David, are there people writing in the chat box? I assume you want to see whether they are answering to your question, John, right?
That would be fantastic, yes.
Let's see if we have any traction there. Can you help us, David?
So
John,
while you're
yeah,
maybe thinking of some of those ideas, some of the things that people often talk about is that design is about being creative.
yeah, that was one of the topics somebody wrote.
Great. So yeah, it's definitely, bringing some imagination to bear on a problem. So that's definitely a quite common thing that people talk about. Another one is, and it's really important in the studio because it's not just ideas, it's also making things. So building prototypes and designing screens and interactions and products and physical things and things that work. Maybe they don't work in every way that a finalized product or service would do, but certainly making things is really important to design. It's also a process, and people often see design as kind of working from the early stages of a business problem through to doing research with people who are going to use the product or service, to coming up with concepts, and then through to production. So it's kind of all of those things. And the main thing for me is that design thinking and innovation really centers on teamwork. The notion that one person or the kind of lone genius comes up with amazing ideas doesn't really resonate with the real world of innovation and breakthrough products and disruption. It's almost always a team activity. And that's kind of what we do in the studio and what we try and do in our design thinking. So that's just a little bit of background. Many people talk about design thinking, and it's become so popular now that if you look on social media or in any curricula, it's almost bound to crop up in discussions. Design thinking is now something that businesses embrace. It's no longer something that you just find in art schools and design colleges. Design and creativity, imagination, making things, making prototypes, and going through that process is something that a lot of organisations are adopting. And if you go back not that far to the roots of design thinking, you will often find this diagram. And I'm going to go into a little more detail about it, but it's a really important way of understanding what's different about design and design thinking and what's different in creative ways of problem solving. Because if you compare art and science, science is built on a very logical way of solving a problem or finding something out. And the scientific method is been used and has done amazing things and discovered lots of things and like black holes and put people on the moon. And so it's a very tried and tested way. Creativity fits into that process, but it tackles problems in a much more iterative way. This diagram comes from the Design Council in the UK, and as you can see, we call it the double diamond, and you can kind of see two diamonds that follow each other. And this is the essence of design thinking because it's starting from a small problem, a well-defined one, opening it up and then closing in on a solution and then doing that in iterations. It's not particularly clear, I know, so I just created this example. So if you take one of the diamonds, the way to think about this is a way to approach any problem. And it's particularly effective if you want to come up with a solution that is different, that is disruptive, that is maybe not the obvious answer. It's not so good at making kind of discoveries and doing the kind of things that science and engineering do much better. But it is very good for startups and people who want to kind of look at things differently. So if you think about divergence, which is a bit of a complicated word, it basically means like really opening your mind to ideas and really opening up, not being constrained by any limitations, not being negative, not being too critical in your thinking. And you can do that as an individual, but you can also try and do that in a group of people and in teams. So you try and put all of your kind of logical thoughts aside and just really open things up. But if you do that too much, you don't get to a solution. You just come up with kind of great blue sky ideas. So then you need to converge, and you need to converge on a tangible, practical outcome. And that's a different kind of thinking. That is much more closer to kind of science and engineering. So I kind of had a little bit of an example here just to illustrate how this opening out and focusing in works. If you imagine that maybe you had a brief, so someone asked you to think about a new way of producing an address book like you might have on your phone. So a list of contacts, a list of people that you would want to contact. That's kind of a quite sizable opportunity to kind of think about how you could innovate around that. If you diverge from that, you might move much more broadly from a phone and an address book and a list of people to the idea of a network. And it could be a social network, it could be digital, but it could just be a social group. So you've moved from something that's very well defined, even has a metaphor of a kind of a physical book, into something that's much more diffuse and amorphous, something that's a network that has many connections. So this is a way to how people innovate and this kind of like opening up of ideas. And if you do it really well in a team, you can kind of build on that opening up and thinking about things differently. But then obviously you need to come back to the nuts of the problem. So then you might converge. You might think, okay, so what would you do with some kind of network or social grouping? Well, maybe you could, rather than have an address book that has a limited amount of addresses in it, maybe you could just have some kind of open channel. So that's just an idea about how this diverging and converging works in kind of problem solving. And really, design thinking is built upon that. All of the other information and details and methods and ways of doing things are basically making it easy to be able to do this different way of thinking. And if you think about engineering or science, that would probably just go straight through the middle, be a much more kind of logical path. So I'm just going to move on now. So that's the kind of overall philosophy almost of design thinking, that it's a different way of problem solving that relies on opening up and closing in on an idea. But design thinking is more than a way of thinking. It's a set of methods and tools that can practically help you, anyone. You don't have to be a trained designer. They're tools and methods that anyone can use, and these are really powerful ways of coming up with new ideas, of understanding the world, of making things. And these methods don't belong to anyone. They've evolved over the last 40 or 50 years. I'm using an example from the Luma Institute. And the Institute is a partnership with Avanade, who helps us facilitate design thinking sessions and help us to accredit the people in our studios who do this. And they've produced this really good toolkit that lists all of the methods. And I'm not going to go into them in detail, But the interesting thing is if you think back to the divergence and converging, their methods fit into that same pattern. So their first set of methods is all about kind of understanding and looking out, not necessarily knowing what the problem is, but finding tools and methods from very simple interviews, talking to people, finding out what they do, to more complex qualitative ways of understanding people, which we sometimes refer to ethnography. So we're going into shopping malls or museums or stations, and we're observing, we're looking to find out. We don't know what we're going to find out, but we know that understanding what people are doing and their practices will help us to innovate. And then the second one is where in the middle, where we kind of start to converge. So rather than it being very amorphous set of things that we've found out, we're now creating artifacts and outcomes of these things. So that could be, for example, a set of stakeholders, so or personas, so descriptions of the people who are involved in this new service that we might be innovating. And then the third one is about taking all that information and then again converging on a solution and using very easy methods to make that real and to bring it to life. So kind of sketches and diagrams. So Luma Institute is a really good set of methods, but there are many more. And there are many that are available on the internet and through books. IDEO, which is one of the biggest design agencies in the world, have their own set of cards. There is also some service design network methods. If you search for design methods, you will find a catalogue of things that you can really easily use. And while you use words like ethnography, which might sound incredibly complex, these are very simple methods and tools to use that you can do in any session that you might have. And I'm going to give you some tips on how to do that. But that's just to show you the other side of design thinking. So as well as a way of thinking, it's a set of practical tools that you can use. So I wanted to give you some tips and insights to how we take the design thinking philosophy and the methods and we mash those together in the studio. And all of the things that I'm going to mention again are very simple. You can find more information or you can contact myself or anyone in the Avanade studios to get more help on this. But I'm hoping that you come away with this thinking that there's some things that you can easily do. So in the background on the left-hand side, you'll see a couple of people in the studio and they're standing against a whiteboard with lots of sticky notes. And that's the kind of stereotype of the design studio and what design thinking is. So lots of post-it notes and lots of sticky notes and bits of paper and cardboard and rough notes. And this really works. So what we've found when we work with people who haven't gone through the design thinking methods and tools is they don't think in quite the same way because they don't share the ideas as they're evolving. They tend to write down quite detailed descriptions. They tend to talk rather than producing ideas quickly. So this way of using post-it notes, sticky notes and cards is just a way of sharing the way to ideate and innovate. So in the background, you can maybe pick out some of those. And in this case, this is a workshop that we ran. There's lots, usually we have like 6 to 12 people, sometimes as many as 20. We never innovate and ideate with one person. It's always with a group because the more people you have, it's critical mass. It's the more people you have, if you facilitate it and run it properly, the more ideas you'll have. So the basic starting point is to interviews, have some data. And in this case, we've just printed out some interviews, transcripts that we've taken from some end users of a new product. So it might be someone who's using a website or using an app. So we talk to them and we kind of write down what they've talked about and what they've spoken, what their ideas, what their own needs are. And that's a really strong input to coming up with a new solution. If you just try and do that without kind of grounding it in other people's experience, you might be lucky. It's much stronger if you can kind of ground it in what people are really thinking, what they're doing. So interview is the first thing, and that can be very quick and easy to do. You can make it very complex and do questionnaires, but definitely talk to people. Then there's this how might we, which sounds very simple. It's just a short phrase that is used in many design thinking methods. And what it is, it's incredibly powerful but very simple. It's just a way of phrasing a problem or an opportunity in a way that forces people to think in this divergent and convergent way. Because you might have a problem that you're trying to solve, or it may not be something that's wrong. Maybe you need to improve something. So using this, how might we? So how might we find a better way to communicate with each other? How might we innovate as a group? You can use this in any situation. And it sounds very simple, but I promise you, if you try it, it will make you come up with ideas that you would never have had beforehand. So that's the how might we, sometimes called HMW. Often in workshops and in sessions, we're creating a lot of data in the form of sticky notes and cards and ideas. And in the diagram and photograph, you can maybe see we're starting to group those. And this is a very common practice in design thinking where we look at themes and commonalities between ideas. And by grouping them and naming those groups, we start to build a shared understanding. And again, this is much stronger, much more powerful if you're doing this activity in groups. The fourth one, again, is a very, very simple method, but it's so powerful. It's called dot voting, or visualize the votes. And on the right-hand side, unfortunately, it's in black and white. You can maybe see some little rectangles that are slightly darker than the card. And that card has a how might we statement, as you can see. How might we provide Avanade travellers with some experiences similar to Uber? So that's a statement that we've tweaked and written in this HMW way to spur ideas. The dot voting is very simple. It's basically using a dot to vote or to prioritize or to pick the best idea. What's different is that everyone votes at the same time, and the person who's running these sessions, which we call a facilitator, will count down from 3, 2, 1. Everyone in the group will then vote at the same time. This means that you avoid any of the kind of conflicts and personality clashes and dominant personalities you might have in a group. And it means that you really reach consensus very quickly. And it's, for some reason, it's people really enjoy doing this. In the sessions that I've done, they really like having the power as a group to kind of decide on things. And then the last one, there's lots of variations on this, but it's just sketching and drawing. There's some very sophisticated ways of doing this. Google uses something called Crazy Eights. So in the illustration, you can see a sheet of paper that's been divided up, and it forces everyone to come up with 8 different ideas or 8 variations. But moving away from words, moving away from polished slides and ideas, and being very quick and iterative, using paper, bits of post-it notes, anything you can find. Not only helps people to understand the concept and the idea, but it's also very effective to come up with cutting-edge ideas. So I just wanted to go through some of the methods that we use most often and the most powerful ones in the studio. And they all come from the Luma toolbook. But as I mentioned, there are many variations of that you can find, and they all in some ways build in this convergence and divergence. So when you interview, you're understanding something and you're focusing in maybe on one particular person or one group of people. And then the how might we forces you to open up your thinking. We're not thinking about a solution even, we're just thinking how might we do something in the broadest sense. And then clustering again forces the thinking and the ideas into groups to kind of categorize all of the many ideas and inputs that you'll have. So again, it's going in. Dot voting is a little bit different because it's about reaching consensus in a group, but doing it in a very open, transparent way, in a way where everyone's ideas count. And that's really important because, as I said at the beginning, coming up with a brilliant idea as an individual doesn't happen very often. It's almost certainly a process, but it's not designed by committee. It's not coming up with the lowest common denominator. So dot voting means that you get the strength of numbers, but you don't get the kind of negative side of going for the kind of middle ground. And then sketching. This is such an important thing to do if you're in a session or you're coming up with ideas. Often people would just go straight into writing some kind of document and writing things down or talking about it rather than talking or writing about something. Visualize it. Visualization literally makes your brain work in a different way because it accesses different channels and you think about things in a more abstract way. So I really recommend that. I just wanted to finish on, again, it's a bit hard to pick out what's the most important thing here because everything all kind of combines into this really distinctive way that creative people innovate. And it's a set of methods and tools, some of them that many different disciplines use, like interviewing, some are very specific to designers, so kind of sketching. And it all builds in this very different way of thinking about things. But I just wanted to kind of take another aspect of design, and this is what people get taught in product design. And there are many variations of design, there's service design and user experience. Product design is very strong in terms of its links with innovation because it's about making a physical product, something that people will want to buy, something that will attract consumers. And one of the classic ways, and what you get taught in art and design schools, is this many to few way of ideating. And time after time, I've seen teams and individuals trying to come up with really good ideas. And what will happen is they will fixate on the first idea that they have. I promise you, if you observe anyone doing some ideation, coming up with ideas, you will see this. They'll find what they think is a really good idea, and sometimes it is the best idea, but they'll be very reluctant to move from that first initial idea. And this is this can limit your powers of innovation because the first idea you have could be amazing, but as every successful product from the iPod to Dyson to anything that's successful, particularly in the digital channel, will tell you, comes through iteration. And what they tell you in product design school is to start with many ideas. And if you think of those at the top of that funnel that as your sticky notes and your cards and your ideas, they're not finalized, they're not kind of detailed, but they're just very conceptual. You try and create as many as possible, and then you use a filtering method. So you can use design thinking methods such as dot voting, or you could do some research, you could test them out with end consumers. But the idea is that you go from as many ideas to the few and to then to the single one. And you're very open to combine ideas, to try them out, to discard them, to pivot. And I just wanted to end on that as a kind of really important thing to try out, because it takes a certain level of boldness to say, okay, I think I've got the best idea in the world, but I'm gonna see what other people have, and I'm gonna risk trying out some other things before deciding and kind of investing too much time into the final solution of what that product and service is. And that was my final slide. I'm sorry that I've gone through so many new things and lots of ideas and examples in slides, but I hope I've given you just a few pointers and tasters on design thinking. And if I can just kind of consolidate all of that, think about design thinking in that sense, that it's about thinking about a design, thinking about a problem creatively, not being kind of limited by the constraints. And it's about having structure to how you go about the process with other people to come up with ideas and concepts. It's not just about kind of randomly starting and moving around. It's kind of interesting because it's almost like a kind of engineering process to creativity. Have a structure where you start from research, you come up with ideas, and you have this funnel, starting with many, going to few. And I hope that helps you. And if you have any questions, I'll be very happy to see if I can help.
Thank you very much, John. I think this has been very insightful, and I'm sure that they will use the design thinking in different ways in their startup creation. It can be used not only at the beginning, but also through the process when they are thinking of new developments. So definitely very interesting. And I know that you guys have questions, and we have a session of Q&A after we hear from Tina about the Avanade Digital Innovation Award criteria. So I wanted to encourage all of you to think of everything that John said and how you would apply that to your startup and all the questions you might have, because we will open up for Q&A right after Tina's intervention. So please allow me to thank John and give the floor to Tina for giving us more insight about the Digital Innovation Award.
Excellent. Thank you, Diana, and thank you, John. That was great. I really enjoyed listening to that. So I, for one, will be following up with a few questions. But yeah, I just wanted to literally take 5 minutes so we can get on to the questions, just to talk a little bit about the Avanade Award. And I wonder if we could go to, I think I've just got 2 slides. There we go. So it's the Avanade Digital Innovation Award. This is our second year. You can see a photograph there of last year's winning team. It was the team from France, the Cook Me Up team, on stage there with our leadership. But really, just on this page, just wanted to say that we, or the judges, and I'll reference the judges in a second, are really looking for a team who have incorporated digital technology into their business, as opposed to just had it, thought of it as an add-on. So we're really looking for a business idea that's very much shaped around the use of digital technologies, or has used digital technologies, referencing back to John's talk there, to take a problem and find a solution. So that's what they're looking for. If you've kind of got a business idea and it's already shaped, and then you just tack a bit of technology at the end, that's not so much what they're looking for. It's really how these technologies, new digital technologies, AI, design thinking, and so on, have been sort of worked right the way through your business idea. So we have 4 judges who will be with you, with the teams in Oslo this year. That's Matt Joe, and Matt is our Avanade Chief Technology Officer, so very innovative chap. We also have Heba Ramsey, who leads our corporate citizenship program for Avanade, and has a deep background in the non-profit and social sector space. We have Jens Bo Nielsen, who is our Executive General Manager for all of our Avanade business in the Nordics. So this will be taking place in his home territory there in Norway. And also Lisa Af Ekenstam, who is our European marketing lead, but also is our program manager for an initiative we have called Technology for Social Good, where we look to take Avanade and our employees and our capabilities into the social sector. So those are your judges. So great lineup, and they really have a strong idea on what they're looking for. In terms of the prize, there's a couple of components. There is a monetary prize, so it's €1,000, and this can be used either to further your business idea or to put towards continuing your education. So it really is up to you how you spend that money. Additionally, we've added in a couple of other things. We would love for you, the winning team, to come to London and meet with a number of our senior executives. So Darren Hardman, who is our European lead, when he has his executive leadership team meeting, we would love to invite you along and give you an opportunity to have some time and chat with these very accessible executives in a fast-moving technology company. And also we would like to offer each team member a mentor. So we will talk with you, find out what you're looking for in a mentor, but that mentor can be there just to coach you through your education, to talk to you about a career in the technology industry, or maybe you want to mentor maybe someone from John's team who can help you to continue to build out and grow your business idea. So we can talk with you about that and find an appropriate person to be your mentor for the remainder of your time while you're studying. So I wonder if we could just hop to the next slide. I think David has got the controls. So I was just going to speak very quickly to the award criteria. So last year we had 4 criteria. We've added an extra criteria this year. And I'll just, again, skip over this quickly. So a very big portion of the marks, 45%, looks at the use of digital innovation. And this really harks back to my first comment about we're looking for an idea, a business idea that is really structured around either an innovative product or service that leverages that digital technology in a systemic way, as opposed so the 45% of the marks goes to the use of digital innovation. So really key that your product or service is very much built around the technology. 30% of the marks looks at, is this viable and feasible? So does it have real business potential? Do you have a plan in place? Has your team really thought it through? Do you have a strong strategy? Have you looked at your different structures, your distribution channels, etc., etc.? So is it viable? Is it feasible? Have you really done your due diligence and thought all of that through? And indeed, does it fill a gap in the market? Have you sort of looked at a problem and created a solution? Or have you come up with something brand new that nobody else has thought of? So that's, again, high scoring. That's 30% of the marks. 15% of the marks looks at sustainability, so really looks at, again, how you've applied rigor. So is this business sustainable? Looking at your leadership and your team, do you have a succession plan? Have you worked out how you're going to recruit the right talent in? Have you really thought about the agility? Can you sort of move quickly? Can it hop as opportunities are presented? Then 10% of the marks is more on the soft skills, but as we know, soft skills in this day and age are incredibly important. So how do you present it? Are you able to put together a compelling proposition that really makes the judges think, yes, this team are the right team to take this business and carry it forward? How are you able to communicate it well to the team? And then finally, this year we've added in some bonus points around digital ethics. This is a very big subject, one that Avanade does a lot of work behind, and that's really looking at, if you're using some technologies, maybe artificial intelligence, have you sort of looked at the principles behind your startup? Have you looked at the security and the data privacy of the people that you're going to be offering your product or service to? So really that's something else that you want to be thinking of as you're formulating your business plans and the use of technology within those plans. So at that point, I will hand back to Diana. That was all I wanted to cover, but I'm going to stay on the line as well with my phone switched off, just in case I'm able to help with the Q&A as well. So back to you, Diana.
Thank you so much, Tina. Thanks for all the information. And I hope everyone is excited about this award, because we are. And I know that the opportunities that you are giving to the winning team is fantastic. I mean, who will not want to come to London to be with your executives there to learn more about your world and be more put in the opportunity to network and get the visibility for what they are doing. So I hope you convince everyone to look into the digital innovation. And I want to check with David, how do we stand on the questions? And if you will be so kind to read them out to us.
Yep, we have a couple of questions. The first one is connected with the first part of the presentation of John. And it says that I agree that the method is a very good tool, and it is a new tool. So how was this process done in the past?
So I think the question is about how the kind of design process is now compared to previous, and particularly from the perspective of innovation. If I have that correct. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So this is an interesting point, because in design, there's a real distinction made between kind of science and engineering, and the types of ways of problem solving that I've gone through in the slides. And the story is that in the 60s and 70s, particularly in digital, so particularly where you're talking about software and building things with this kind of intangible material of bits and binary, that engineering was very good at very large projects and delivering amazing transformations, like putting people in space and building the first family of computers. But because it was a very linear process, it was less able to provide quick, innovative startup timescales of moving from idea to product in the market. So that's why design thinking has become very popular in the last 5 to 10 years, because this iterative, rapid way and coming up with ideas within a team is a much more effective way to use digital technology than having these very kind of long-term projects. And that's why this way of working is so amenable and works so well with things like agile and product approaches, where the idea is to get something very quick. So whether it's a minimum viable product or some kind of prototype to test it to get data. So design thinking and design has obviously been around for a long time, but I would argue that its distinctive way of problem solving has become much more relevant to the kind of economies that we live in, where innovation and quick responses to market changes and adoption of technologies is more relevant. I hope I answered the question, but it's a really interesting one.
Thank you. There's another question. How can we use design thinking in large projects? As this project involves many people, how you can coordinate them?
Well, that's a good one as well. So the kind of obvious answer would be to say, well, design thinking can help you to manage a large team. And the way that it can help you is because if you look at the methods, and I've only just glossed over all of the methods. I mean, Luma Institute has 45, and there's probably between 50 and 100 methods. Many of the methods help to facilitate group decisions and help a range of people and large teams to prioritize things in a way that's very democratic, but very structured and very transparent. So some of the tools that are very good for working in teams are obviously kind of workshops. Some of the things like difficulty value matrix. There's a whole range of tools that you can use to do that. But the underlying reason for design thinking being particularly relevant to collaboration is because the role of the designer isn't the kind of creative genius, but it's the facilitator. The designer is helping these groups to independently come up with the best ideas. So I would recommend, if you're working in a group, to take a look at some of the methods, try them out. And one tip would be to make sure that if you're working in a large group, and I'm talking over 20 people, I would think about breaking that bigger group down into smaller pods or cells, as you do in Agile, and then kind of working out how you maximize the value of each of the groups. So, for example, you could get one group to do one part of the concept, another group to get the kind of customer facing part of the concept, but you design the activities to come up with the right answer. The worst way is not to facilitate, not to have any structure, and then you just get a load of arguments. So things like dot voting is a really strong way of getting to consensus. So design thinking can really help in that situation.
Thank you. We have another couple of questions. The first is, where does A/B testing fits in the design thinking framework?
Yeah, these are all really good questions, I have to say. So A/B testing, and for those who are maybe not so familiar with doing multivariate testing, this is a way, particularly for digital products and services, of how you can try out different design solutions by giving an audience, a group of users of a product or service, a different variation of a design. And testing and research is another fundamental part of design thinking, because all of the methods are built on data. A/B testing is the most recent, up-to-date way of doing testing. So generally in design, we do much more qualitative research and testing. So we do kind of usability tests with smaller groups of people. But actually, if you can combine the quantitative data that you get in A/B testing with that qualitative insights, that you get a real sense of the kind of end customer and the consumers as people rather than just data, you get a really strong combination of insights. A/B testing is obviously quite difficult to do on prototypes, but there are ways of doing it. So you can build prototypes that work online, or what some people call pre-prototypes, and get the same idea of kind of testing multiple variations of a design. So it definitely fits in. I guess it would also be useful just to kind of build on that in terms of digital services that we work on within Avanade. I've given you some examples of the kind of problems that we solve with design thinking in the studio. And the one that comes to mind is relates to health, and is one of our kind of large clients within the UK that is a health provider. And we were asked to provide a way of streamlining consultations. So the way that patients or the general public interact with general practitioners, so doctors, as a way of making sure that they get the right treatment, that the treatment is the right one, but also doing it in what we'd call in the UK a very frugal way. So making sure that it's the most cost effective, the fastest from problem to diagnosis. And we used design thinking methods to look at what the best type of solution would be for that problem. And then we used a lot of research, and not so much A/B testing, but a lot of qualitative research before we did any concept, before we done any ideation, before we kind of worked out the solution or to design. So we really understood the doctors, the patients, the administrators, and then we involved them in the design. And again, similar to the previous question about the role of designers, it's more about facilitating, helping other people come up with solutions. We got the patients and the doctors and the administrators to create concepts and ideas themselves. We helped them to kind of sketch things out, to create prototypes and to try them out with each other. And it was only at the end that we really used the design tools and kind of interaction coding that we do in the studio. But we work on lots of innovation projects. That's just the one that's kind of closest to my heart. We do stuff on automation, AI, every kind of technology and every kind of client. Just to give you a bit of background, we tend to be involved. I think one of the previous speakers mentioned this. I think Tina, that design thinking and design bit tends to be earlier on in the project. So we do a lot of shorter projects, but absolutely from the standpoint of how we can innovate as a kind of startup. I see this question actually about the lean and kind of business model canvas. So again, I don't see these, particularly the business orientated tools and methods, as a kind of challenge to design thinking. They all work together, and actually some of the canvases we use in design thinking, they're part of the toolkit, others aren't. It's just where we put our focus in as kind of creative practitioners. That kind of approach of using standard templates to either define something or to prioritize something, again, resonates with many of the methods. The thing that I think is distinctive and is a little bit different from what you'll read in kind of Eric Ries and that kind of lean and products literature, is that design thinking is kind of counterintuitively based on collaboration. It's about how do you get a group of people to populate, business model canvas? How do you get a group of people to kind of support ideation and innovation? So that's probably the only thing that's like not really a contradiction, but kind of adds to it. But it's a distinctive thing that we do in design thinking. I know that we're, I think, coming up to time, but if there's any other questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Davide, is there any other burning question that we should cover?
No more questions.
Fantastic. Well, the discussion was great, and appreciate all your insight, John, and everyone's participation. Thank you so much. If you do still have any further questions that you would like to address to Avanade executives, we still have a digital clinic coming up on the 15th of May, and that's mostly for you to ask any kind of burning questions linked with digital innovation to experts from Avanade. So please mark your calendar for the 15th of May. More information information will follow with the minutes from this webinar for the digital clinic. And as I mentioned before, we have recorded the webinar. We'll send you the recording so that you could make available for the students who were not able to join today. And I would like to very much thank Avanade for all their support with this award, with the webinars, and to make available all this knowledge for you to use it in your startups. Thank you all, and thank you everyone for participating.